Good morning again, guys. Now, welcome to science class. Today we are going to have lesson 5 in unit 2. What is climate? Here you can see a picture showing the climate of the earth. And for you, what is climate? In lesson 3, we were learning about the weather. So, is not climate and weather the same? Yes or not? Or there is any difference between climate and weather? So, I want you to see this picture of here. Oh, what amazing place to be there, right? So, what do you think is the climate in this place most of the year? Hot, right? Very sunny, hot, tropical. Because generally beaches are like that. Hotter than the other places and very sunny. But do you think it's always all the year like that? Or do you think sometimes it's raining and even though some days maybe it's going to be cold? Yes or not? Yes, right? It's like here in Tegucigalpa, for example. Last week, if you remember, was with an amazing weather. It was very cold. But this week is totally different. It's very hot. So, if you notice, sometimes in a place we are going to have, during the year, most of the days are going to be in one way, but sometimes the weather is going to change. Sometimes it's going to be colder or rainy or different from the general state of the climate. So, do we have difference between weather and climate? Let's continue. I want you to open your book in page 249. Learning destination, page 249. And before starting and answering the question that I said to you, I want you to know what words we are going to learn in this lesson. Words to know. We have 3 vocabulary words. And let's repeat them. Climate. Climate. Latitude. Latitude. Elevation. Elevation. So, can weather and climate be the same? Or do we have any difference between weather and climate? So let's read and underline the most important details of this. Average weather. I want you to read what I have underlined here for you. So, I want you to read here. The words weather and climate, looking here, do not have the same definitions. That means weather is different from climate. Let's see, what is weather? Are the conditions in one place at a single moment. The conditions of the atmosphere in one place in a single moment, and weather changes very often. So I want you to see this picture of here. This is weather. The conditions of the atmosphere, but in only one place at a single moment. For example, it can be that in one part of the city is raining, but suddenly next day is very sunny or cloudy. Like we had the example I told you. Last week it was very rainy and cold. And this week is sunny and very hot. That is weather. Why? Because it changes very often and it happens only in certain areas at a specific time. So it was not the condition of all the country. The weather that we had last week was not in all the country. Okay, so just in one area and it changes. So weather is just for a very short period of time and it changes very quickly. Now, guys, I want you to see climate. What is climate? Is one of the vocabulary words. Is the weather conditions, it's related, just that over a long time. It's always the condition of the atmosphere, if it's hot, cold, but it's in a very long time. So climate can cover a long time, but climate can have different weather. Do you understand? Climates do not change as much as daily weather does. And I want you to see here, for example, this picture shows the climate of most part of the earth. For example, the red areas are areas that are very hot. And if you see here, by this part of here we have Central America. That means here we have Honduras. In general, the climate of Honduras is hot because it's in a zone that is very hot. You're going to learn that later, in what zone Honduras is. But if you see by here, Alaska, Canada, it's cold, it's blue, it's cold. It means that it's cold, generally. So in here, in our country, generally, our climate is tropical, it's hot. But that does not mean that we are not going to have, for example, some days in which we are going to have cold weather. So climate describes the conditions of the weather, but in a very long period of time. And weather, the conditions of the atmosphere, but in a very short period of time and in a certain area or place. So weather changes very quickly and climate is more steady or does not change too much. Now guys, I want you to see the picture that you have in here. Remember that if you cannot see the presentation from your cell phones very well because the screen of your cell phone is small, we are working right now in page 249. So look in your books in 249 and I want you to see this picture that you have in there. It's a forest. These very big trees that you see here, look, they are very big. The name are giant because they are very big sequoia trees. Giant sequoia trees. These ones are. They grow in a very small area of California. And the climate in that area is generally humid with a lot of remember that the humidity is a lot of water vapor in the air. So it's very humid and it has very dry summers and the winters are very snowy. Some giant sequoias have been alive for thousands of years. Thousands of years. Imagine thousands of years a tree living And I want you to read this caption that you have in here. Sequoias are able to live for thousands of years because the climate remains nearly steady where they grow. So let's answer number 1. How do you know that this climate in which these trees grow, it's a good climate for this kind of trees, for the giant sequoias? Why do you think, or how do you know that this one is a very good climate for them? Let's read. Remember, it says that these giant sequoias are very big, and also it says that they can live for thousands of years. So is the climate good or bad for them? Good, right? But how do you know that it's good for them? Because they live very long time. So let's answer. The climate is good for them because they are able to live for a long time. If not, they were already dead. If the climate is not good for a plant, the plant is going to die. But in this case, it seems that the climate is good for this kind of trees because the trees can live very long. Now let's go to page 250. This page that you have in here, 250, and we are going to read factors that affect climate. Factors that affect climate. Do you think we have the same climate in all the world? No, right? Because here we have one climate, and if you go, for example, to Alaska or Canada, you are going to find a different climate. So let's read here. Different areas of the world have different climates. And some factors that affect the climate are latitude, elevation, and closeness to large bodies of water. 3 factors that are going to determine the kind of climate of a place. Latitude, elevation, and closeness to large bodies of water. So we are going to see the first one, latitude. So let's read. We already know that latitude is one of the factors that affects the climate. But what is latitude? Help me reading. Is a measure of how far a place is from the equator. And the latitude is measured in degrees. How far a place is from the equator. Latitude is going to tell you if you are close or far from the equator. I want you to look at this picture that we have here. By here we have the equator. This one of here is the equator. So, when we talk about latitude, latitude tells me the distance that I have, for example, from this place with the equator in degrees. So it says that it is 30 degrees to the north from the equator. Here is to the north and here is to the south. Do you understand? For example, here I have another place. What distance do I have from this place and the equator? 60 degrees north. Okay? So remember, latitude tells me the distance from one place in relation with the equator. And let me tell you something else. The areas that are near to the equator are hotter than the other ones. Listen carefully. Areas that are near to the equator are hotter than the ones that are farther from the equator. And let's continue in the same page, but I want you to show you other picture. So I want you to see or to read this. In our planet, in the Earth, we have three major zones of climate. The first one is the tropical zone. This one, the tropical zone, is 33 and 5 degrees to the south from the equator and 23 and 5 degrees to the north from the equator. So if you can see, here we have the equator, and from here to here we have 23 and 5 degrees to the north and 23 and 5 degrees to the south. All the places that are between this area, the climate they are going to have, or the zone in which they are going to be, is in the tropical zone. I want you to see here in this picture, all the yellow area, all this one that you have here, is the tropical zone. Here we have the equator, 23 degrees to the north and 23 degrees to the south, and all the areas that we have here are in a tropical zone. So by here, by this side, is not appreciated very well, but by this side we have North America. Look, this one is South America, North America, Central America, and here North America. So we are in Central America. That means that we are in a tropical zone. Our climate is tropical. And what does it mean to be tropical? Here we have the sun. These ones are the rays of the sun. And if you see, the rays of the sun, los rayos, rays of the sun, hit directly to the equator. That's why places that are near to the equator are going to be hotter than the other ones. That's why we have a hot climate and not like the climate of United States or Canada that is very cold. Why? Because we are in a tropical zone in which it's very close to the equator and the rays of the sun hits directly this area. So I want you to underline this also. Here, the sun's energy hits most directly all the year. Look, it's hitting directly all the year. So it's usually warm or hot, the climate. Then, the other zones, we have two more zones, and I want you to underline them. The north and the south poles is another zone, north and south poles, the polar zone and the solar poles in the north and in the south. Here, the climate is generally cold. That's why in the north, in the polar zone in the north and in the polar zone in the south, it's very, very, very cold. Why? Because if you can see in the picture here, the sun, the rays of the sun hits less directly to this area. They do not have the rays as in the tropical zone that we have them directly. In there, the rays of the sun does not hit this area directly. That's why it's colder than the tropical zone. And you can see that from the equator to the north, this area is at 66 and 5 degrees to the north and 66 and 5 degrees to the south. This area of here is the South Pole, and this area of here is the North Pole. But what happened with this area and this one? We already know that this one is the tropical zone, North Pole, South Pole. But what about this, the green area? The blue are the poles, the orange is the tropical zone, and what about the green? That is the third area. Remember that I told you we have three major zones of climate in the earth. So one is the tropical zone, that is here, this one, tropical zone, the polar zone, the blue one, this one up here, and the polar zone over here. But we have another one. So between the polar zone and the tropical zone, there are two more that it's only one area, and it's the temperate zone. So we have three: tropical zone, this one up here, polar zones, this one up here, and temperate zones, this and this, this and this. Tropical, temperate, and polar. Here in the temperate zone, energy from the sun is more direct during the summer, causing the temperature to be higher during the summer. And the sun's energy is less direct in the winter. So this causes the winters to be colder. And let me tell you, United States is in a temperate zone. And in temperate zones, they have the 4 seasons: summer, spring, summer, fall, and winter. In a tropical zone, we do not have the 4 stages. The 4 stages or seasons of the year. We have only 2, or winter or summer. It's very marked, only 2 in the tropical area, but in the temperate, they have the 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. That's why in United States we can see a lot of trees in fall or autumn which leaves fall. That's why the season it's called fall, because the leaves are falling from the trees. In number 2, why are the polar regions, these and these, usually cold? Do you remember why they are cold areas? It says that you have to underline one statement that supports your answer. Why do they have cold climate, the polar zones? Because they are very near from the equator or very far from the equator. Because they are very far from the equator. Excellent. And remember that if they are far from the equator, the sun does not hit directly that area, and that's why that area is colder than the other ones. So let's answer. The sun's energy is less direct in those areas of the earth. Okay? And now let's continue with, or in page 251. Here we have the three zones: the tropical zone, that is very hot, the temperate zones, we have 2 temperate zones, and the polar zones. Okay? So number 3 is something that you have to do. It says, Write two words to describe each climate zone. So, how is the polar zone? How can you describe the polar zone? How is the climate in here? So write it in here. How is the temperate zone? Two words to describe the temperate zone and two words to describe how the tropical zone is. You can read in the previous page so you can answer here. Okay? And then this is number 3 is for you. I'm going to help you with number 4. It says, justify. Deciduous trees have leaves that fall off during some seasons. Remember the seasons of the years. So, might you find deciduous trees in the tropical zone, in this zone? Why? Why yes or why not? I have a picture in here. This one is a deciduous tree. But in one of the seasons of the year, this happens. All the leaves fall from the tree. So, can this tree be found in the tropical zone? Yes or not? If yes, why? And if not, why? Remember that I told you which one of these zones, the polar zone, the temperate zone, or the tropical zone, has the 4 seasons? This one, right? The temperate zone has the 4 seasons. And in one of the seasons, leaves from the trees fall. What season is that? This is kindergarten. In the fall or in autumn. So, can you find this that season in tropical zone? No, right? So we are not going to find this kind of trees in tropical zone. So let's answer. No, we are not going to find deciduous trees in tropical zone. Why? Because the temperature does not change much during the year like in this. In the temperate zone, the temperature changes. That's why they have the 4 seasons. Let's go now to page 252. This page of here, 252, bodies of water. Remember that we said that we have 3 factors that affect climate. Latitude, that is the distance from one place to the equator or from the equator. Bodies of water, how close a place is from a body of water. And the third one is elevation. But we are going to learn about bodies of water first. So I want you to underline this and let's read it. It says, the ocean can affect a climate by slowing the rise and fall of air temperature. So let me explain you something. For example, here we have this area of here, these places are very near to the ocean, right? But these places by here are not near from the ocean or to the ocean. So when it's winter, let's suppose that right now it's winter in all this area. So where do you think is going to be colder? In places near the ocean or in places that are far from the ocean? In places that are far from the ocean. Because in winter, places that are near to bodies of water like the ocean, they are not so cold as these ones of here. And in summer happens also something similar. In summer, these areas of here are hotter than the areas that are near the beach. And that is because bodies of water help to keep or to maintain a balance in the temperature. Also, I want you to see here, ocean currents can make a climate warmer or cooler. Do you remember the currents of water? Las corrientes de agua. Okay? If one current of water from a cold place comes to a water that is warmer, that current of water is going to cool this area. Or the contrary, if a current of water that is warm goes to a place that is cold, that area is going to be warm. Okay? So in that way, the ocean helps to maintain the temperature in the air and also in the water. Now, by here you have Kansas in United States, and by this side, here is the ocean, and by this side you are going to find Maryland and Kansas. Look Kansas where is, and look Maryland, it's very close to the ocean. Number 5 says, think of the effect of the ocean. Would Kansas be warmer or colder than Maryland in the winter? Explain. Do you remember what I explained you? If a place is near to the ocean in winter, that place is not going to be so cold. Places that are farther from the ocean in winter are going to be colder. So by here we have Maryland, very near to the ocean. And by here we have Kansas. Which one is going to be colder in the winter, Kansas or Maryland? Kansas, right? Because it's far from the ocean. So let's answer. Colder because it is farther from the ocean. And now, guys, let's go to page 253, and this one is the last one. Another factor that affects the climate is elevation. So remember, latitude, how close a place is from bodies of water, and elevation. So let's underline here. So I want you to read here, higher land or land that is very high is cooler because in the lower part of the atmosphere, temperature decreases. Do you remember that I told you that temperature decreases if it's low and increases if it's high? So now it decreases with increased elevation. Now in here, what is elevation? It is the height above sea level. For example, we have two cities in Honduras, La Ceiba and Tegucigalpa. La Ceiba is hotter than Tegucigalpa, yes or not? Have you ever gone to La Ceiba? So it's very hot, it's hotter than Tegucigalpa. But why? La Ceiba is at the sea level, al nivel del mar. But Tegucigalpa is higher than La Ceiba in relation with the level of the sea. It's elevated. The elevation of Tegucigalpa is higher than La Ceiba in relation with the level of the sea or the sea level. That's why the most elevation a place has, the cooler the climate will be. For example, between Valle de Ángeles and Tegucigalpa, what place is cooler? Valle de Ángeles or Tegucigalpa? Valle de Ángeles, right? Because of the elevation. It has a higher elevation than Tegucigalpa. So, with elevation, the climate is colder than places that does not have too much elevation. So I need you to analyze this picture that you have in here. By here we have the city of Valdivia, and by here we have the city of Plaza Valdivia in Chile and Plaza Junio in Argentina. So number 7 says that number 6, sorry, you have to draw an arrow to show how wind flows between the cities shown here in the map. And you have to explain your answer. Here I'm going to help you. If you have to draw an arrow for the direction of the wind, are you going to draw it to this place, to the north, or to the south? The arrow is going to be to that place or to this place. So, let's draw the arrow. Let me choose a red pen. And the arrow is going to be like this. So I want you to draw the arrow. And why? So let's answer. It's because the air passes over Valdivia first. Here, the city of Valdivia. And the air gets the most rain. But then the air goes over the mountain and has less moisture. Okay? So here you have this answer. And now I want you to go to number 7. Number 7, I'm going to help you. And number 8, you have to do it. Number 7 says, you take a bus trip along the Florida coast from Miami north to Jacksonville. So you are going from Miami to the north to Jacksonville. What temperature change would you expect to have? And explain your answer. So here you have, look in this map. This is Florida. All this is Florida. By here you have the city of Miami. And you are traveling in a bus by the coast from Miami to Jacksonville. Here you have Jacksonville. So you are moving from Miami to Jacksonville, to the north. Do you think are you going to have a change in the temperature? Yes, right? Because you are changing from place. And the temperature changes from one place to the another one. But do you think the temperature is going to increase or decrease? Is going to be hotter or colder if you move from Miami to Jacksonville? Hotter or colder? So, let me tell you that the temperature is going to decrease. That means it's going to be colder. Colder. Because the bus moves away from the equator. So remember, looking here, you have the equator. Remember, this one is the equator. By here, we have, by this side, by this part, we have Miami. Okay, here, look, and in the map is in here. Now, you are moving to the north. So that means that you are moving to this direction, to the north. Look, you are moving to the north, to Jacksonville. So, if you are moving to the north, are you going close to the equator or farther from the equator? Farther from the equator. That means that from this place to here is more distant than from Miami to here. So that means the farther you go from the equator, the colder the climate is going to be. That's why in Jacksonville, the climate is going to change in relation with Miami because you are moving to the north. And if you are moving to the north, you are getting far away from the equator. Now, number 8 is homework for you, and it says name 3 factors that can influence climate. Remember the 3 factors that we were talking about, and I was repeating them. 3 factors that affect climate. If you don't remember them, you have to go to page 250. In there you are going to find the answer. You have to read and answer in number 8. And remember, guys, always to count your blessings. Have a nice day.